Good evening, everyone. I am Janet Bibila, one of your reporter for tonight, and my report is all about Anglo-French or medieval English literature from the state of Pennsylvania. Anglo-French literature is also called Anglo-Norman literature or Norman-French literature. The term Anglo-Norman is generally used to describe the period of English history from the Norman conquest to the middle of the 14th century. Anglo-French is a mix and France or British and French. Their language is English and French. Anglo-French literature is a body of writings in the Old French language as used in medieval England. It was introduced into Wales and Ireland and used to a limited extent in Scotland. From the history of Anglo-French literature, for the English aristocracy, Anglo-Norman became an acquired tongue and its use of gentility. The earliest extant literary texts in the Anglo-Norman dialect belong to the reign of Henry I in the early 12th century. The latest that of Henry IV in the early 15th century. The alienation toward France during the Hundred Years' War started an increasing use of English, the last strongholds of a French dialect being the Parliament and the law, in both of which still survives in a few formulas. From the 12th through the 14th century, Anglo-Norman was second only to Latin in its use as a literary language in England. Most types of literary works were represented in Anglo-Norman as in French, with a slight difference of emphasis. That means that in the history from the 12th century to 15th century, the use of English and French to Anglo-French literature is debatable. Conversely, Anglo-Norman works were known, copied, or imitated on the continent. One important difference between continental and Anglo-Norman literature is that in the early periods, England was often in advance of the continent in the development of new literary forms. Historical writing was popular both in Normandy and in the rest of the continent, and although after the Norman conquest, Latin replaced English for use in documents and chronicles. Examples of both are found in Anglo-Norman. Religious and didactic writing of Anglo-French literature. In the 12th century, the oldest substantial Anglo-Norman prose work, the Book of Kings, was written in England, as were many versions of the Psalter. Samson de Nantil translated into verse the Proverbs of Solomon with commentary. In the 13th century, Robert of Greatham wrote the Sunday Gospels for a noble lady. The same century saw the beginning of the magnificent series of Anglo-Norman apocalypses, best known for their superb illustration which served as a model for a series of tapestries at Angers, France. This means that Anglo-Norman was rich in literature, like the Book of Kings and the Sunday Gospel. The legend of saints, of which Benedict's Voyage of St. Brendan was perhaps the oldest purely narrative French poem. The earliest play entirely in French is the Mystery d'Adam, and it is belonged to Anglo-Norman. The resurrection play, La Chiente Resurrection, was probably 12th century but was more rewritten more than once in the 13th century. There were a few religious allegories. The important is the Castle of French, being the oldest in French. The most attractive and oldest instructive works is the Mirror de Sainte Église, or Mirror of Holy Church, by Saint Edmund of Abingdon. In the 13th to 14th century, countless treatises appeared on technical subjects, manual for confessions, agriculture, law, medicine, grammar, and science. together with works dealing with manners, hunting, hawking, and chess. Spelling treatises produced in the late 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries are valuable for the light they shed on continental French as well as Anglo-Norman. Anglo-French literature was well provided with romances. In the 12th century, one Thomas wrote a courtly version of the Tristan story, which survived in scattered fragments and was used by Gottfried von Strasbourg in Tristan and Isolde, as well as being the source of the Old Norse, Italian, and Middle English versions of the story. Another romance is Waldeck, a long confused story of an imaginary king of East Anglia and his sons. It has a passages of remarkable originality. In the 12th century, some romances were composed in the form of the chanson de geste. For example is the Horn by Master Thomas, which is connected with the Middle English Horn Child and Maiden Rhymnhild. Another Thomas wrote is the Roman de Tout Chivalry, or Romance of All Chivalry, an independent version of the Alexander Romance and the source of the Middle English Romance King Alexander. Marie de France, the earliest named French woman poet, wrote fables based on an English source and 12 narrative lays dedicated probably to Henry II of England in octosyllabic rhyme couplets. She said that they had Breton lays as their originals. Lias and Fabliaux. The Lias is a kind of literature that has a combined realistic and fairy tale elements, and their author was skillful in the analysis of love problems and often showed a keen interest in contemporary life. The Fabliaux is a short metrical tale made popular in medieval France by the jongleurs, or professional storytellers. A few other Fabliaux have been found copied in manuscript from religious houses, probably for exemplary purposes. That's all for my report. Thank you.